Lorna Shaw and I'm a Ruminant Nutritionist with SAC Consulting. So we've been here today at the South Ayrshire Monitor Farm looking at the fodder beet crop that John and David have been growing and that we're currently grazing within lamb ewes. And we've been out to the fodder beet crop, had a look at how it's performing, had a look at how it's growing, a good discussion about feeding fodder beet, and we've also been measuring how to calculate our dry matter intake and then subsequently calculate the allocation for use. It's really important to consider nutritional value of fodder crops in the field. A fodder crop is a really great source of energy and protein for you or cattle or whatever you're grazing, but we need to know how much that nutritional value contributes to the ewes requirement. So by calculating dry matter and how much energy and protein we have available per hectare, we can accurately calculate how much to allocate for the group of ewes to control intakes and control performance. Generally, fodder beet is between about 12.5 to 13 ME within the bulb, which holds most of its energy, so most of the sugar and water is contained within the bulb, and then the leaf is a bit lower in dry matter but higher in protein and minerals. So by calculating how much energy we have available, we first need to know how much dry matter. We know from measurement and sending samples to labs how much energy is contained within that sugar, and by knowing how much is available we can then calculate how much energy is in that area. Today we've worked through how we do measure our dry matter availability and then we calculate our allocation. The first step to measuring allocation is to actually know how much dry matter we have available, and to do that we first measure the row width. So the row width here was about 45 centimetres. We then need to figure out how much we need to measure to get a 25 metre squared area. So we would times that by about 5.5 to get 25 metres squared. So with that 5.5 metre, we then measure along the row, and then we pick every bulb from 2 rows of those bulbs to get that. Once we have all the bulbs picked, we then need to top, so take all the tops off the bulb and separate the bulbs and the tops, and then we need to weigh them separately, which we have done today. So we've got a really good weight of bulbs, slightly lower than expected leaf, but we can factor that into our protein allowances and provide some forage to make sure we're meeting protein requirements. But the crop should be providing pretty much enough protein that those ewes need at this stage. The next step, after we know how much dry matter is available and we can calculate that back, is to then figure out our allocation. So for that we need to know the number of ewes grazing in the field and how long the fence line is to calculate how many metres back to get the correct allocation for ewes. Ewes will roughly eat about 2% of their dry matter intake with about a 70% utilisation, and about 30% of that dry matter should actually be coming from forage as well. So we can factor all those factors in to get an accurate measurement. In order to measure dry matter intake, we just need some fairly simple equipment. We'll need a tape measure, or if you are out wintering on kind of leafy crops, a quadrat can be really handy. The other information we need is some grass seed bags, something that we can measure. We need a scale, so just a luggage scale, something that weighs up to about 50 kilos is ideal. We need a pen and paper for writing down your results. And a pair of gloves can come in handy also. Oh, and not to forget a knife to separate your tops and bulbs. So the best time to measure dry matter availability and your allocation is just before you go into grazing. So a representative sample of what the ewes are actually going to be eating. In terms of how regular we need to do that, probably just before we're grazing to calculate how much we've got available in that field and calculate how much we need to move fences. So there's a couple of things to watch out for when feeding fodder crop to sheep and cattle. Probably focus on fodder beet when I'm talking about this. The first thing to think about is how they're transitioned on. Ewes will transition onto fodder beet a lot easier than cattle. Cattle it's like putting kids in a sweet shop almost sometimes, and once they get really onto it, bloat can be a bit of an issue. So making sure we're transitioning them on slowly, getting them used to the crop, and making sure we're controlling their intakes as well. Sheep will transition a lot easier, but we still need to factor in making sure we've got enough fibrous forage, making sure we've got a dry lie to keep them happy, keep feet dry, which is really important. Feet issues can be a big thing. And another thing to think about is our mineral supply. Fodder beet is quite high in goitrogens, which can block up iodine, so we need to make sure our iodine requirements are met for livestock when we're grazing fodder beet crops as well. A lot of further information available online. SRUC have actually made an outwintering guide for livestock, so there's a lot of information in there in terms of nutritional quality of fodder crops, not just fodder beet, but any outwintering crop. And also how to measure dry matter and calculate our fence allocations. So that's a really good guide which is available online. If you just type in the outwintering guide into Google, it pops up pretty quickly. My 3 takeaways from today would be it's definitely worth spending a wee bit of time to calculate how much dry matter that your crop has grown, so we can get allocations right. It can help control how we move across the field and how long that field's going to sustain livestock for and how much livestock we can graze on the field. Second takeaway would be just to make sure we've always got clean forage, plenty feeders for the amount of stock in the field. And third takeaway was just to make sure you've bolused, clean dry lie, making sure you've got everything right in there for livestock while they're grazing.